Continuing our series predicting every single division in the NHL. Last week we did the Pacific Division. This week we're moving a little bit east and we're taking on the Central, staying in the West. And we're going to start at the very bottom, make our way through, and give our reason for ranking all these teams the way that we will, and all of that fun stuff. Starting off, why don't we talk about Chicago? Because I feel like they're kind of the... I'm going to take a wild shot in the dark and say that you also have Chicago, Caleb, because they're bad.
Correct.
They are really bad. They obviously still have Connor Bedard. He's going to do Connor Bedard things. He'll probably have a pretty incredible sophomore season. But I don't think that's going to save them from the very, very bottom. Because when you look at this team, they really don't have much. Their top line is Teravainen, Bedard, and Bertuzzi. Taylor Hall in the top six. Kurashev and Reichel. I believe it's Reichel.
Yeah.
Not good. Not very good at all. Taylor Hall would not be in many top sixes on any other team in the NHL. It's just their defense is old, bad. They have Alec Martinez, TJ Brody. Like, they've got a good mix, I guess, of young players and veterans, but all the young guys are still 2 or 3 years away from being anywhere good enough to lead a team to, like, even a wild card spot. So I think Chicago's still a little bit away, would be my immediate thing. I actually like what they're doing for the most part. I think I said that last year about them as well. That doesn't mean they're going to go anywhere further than, like, the very last spot in this division. I do think that spot is going to look a little prettier. I think they'll win more games this year, but I don't think it'll be enough to elevate them over the team that I have in second last.
Yeah, and I would completely agree with that too. I think one of the... I'll echo pretty much everything you said, mostly with the fact that this rebuild, even though we do think they're going to come in last, I think it's still going to plan. This roster, if you look at it from before they drafted Bedard, was just like one of the most bare bones depth charts I've ever seen. Just like no real, like,
no prospects,
star talent on there, and no prospects. Like, the cupboard was bare, both in terms of players who could play for them now and players who they could play for the future. And now they're like you said, they're getting a good balance of it. Obviously they're having high draft picks every year, and they're kind of like stockpiling veterans that can play with Bedard. You got Taylor Hall last year, you got Teravainen this year, bringing in like Alec Martinez on defense. Like, they're rounding out the roster to maybe start to become competitive or mentor some younger guys. But yeah, I think the team as a whole, again, like you said, is about 2 or 3 years away. I don't know how much else I have to add because you kind of hit the nail on the head. They're going to be better than last year.
Like, I think that's the biggest thing that I could quickly throw out here. There's a reason we're 3 minutes in and we're already moving on. There's not a lot to talk about with Chicago. They're going to be better. They won't be good. Better does not mean good. Better means maybe 5-6 more wins, maybe 10. 10 if they really, really step on the gas. But I think even in that situation, this division is good. Chicago's at the bottom of a really good division. And I, like me and you were talking about, Caleb, I think this will be a lot of fun, this division specifically, because we're going to disagree on a lot, and it's going to be a great time. But I don't know if we want to do your number 7 here, or if we want to do mine. Mine's a bit controversial.
Ooh, I'll let you take it then.
Sure.
I'll let you take it.
It's controversial, I think, in the sense that I'm trying to go back and check where they were last time. They were 6th last season, so I guess it's not insane to say they stepped back even further. That's not necessarily anything that crazy, I guess. But that being said, I've got the Minnesota Wild. I've got the Minnesota Wild at 7th. And I think that they just haven't really added anything to make me feel like they're going to get better. I think their young guys might improve, and that's great, but I think they're just missing a lot of those depth pieces. They're a weird team in the sense that if they can find some depth to surround, like, Kaprizov, Faber, like, all of their big young stars, like, I do fully believe that they could be a good team. They don't have those pieces yet. And I think that, like, the deeper you go on, like, down this lineup, the more I get more worried for them because Minnesota's a fun team. They have a lot of really fun talent like at the very top, but I don't think that top like I don't like what I see the second I go a little bit deeper. And I think that in a division this deep, they're going to struggle. I think Kaprizov isn't going to be enough. I think his contract's coming up as well, so I think the conversation's got to come up at some point here. Is he going to want to stay in Minnesota if they struggle as much as I personally am going to predict them to do? Because frankly, they don't. He's playing on a line with Ryan Hartman and Matt Zuccarello, who has to be in his late 30s at this point. Like, they're not exactly surrounding him with enough pieces to succeed. So I don't know. Minnesota's such a weird team this year. I think they're probably going to take a step backwards, and if they lose Kaprizov at some point here, that things could be looking pretty dark for this Minnesota team, for as good as their drafting's been at certain points, which is crazy.
Yeah. I'm a little bit higher on them, but I also see all of your points. I have them in 5th. So it's not like it's crazy big difference or anything.
In this division, 5th and 7th isn't very different. Like, that's probably only going to be a few points.
I think there's the Chicago tier. I think there's the top 2. And then if you change up everybody in between, I don't think I'd complain too much, if I'm being quite honest. But I have them in 5th. I think they do have a lot of talent just to give them enough of a floor, especially young talent. Again, Faber, Kaprizov, like those guys are going to give you a certain floor. And I mean, you've even got other guys on the roster. Eric Sinek is a great player. I think Marco Rossi has lots of potential. Matt Boldy, I think, also again has lots of potential. Played really well last year. There's enough young talent on this team to where I think they're going to be able to keep it steady. But yeah, no, there's definitely parts of the roster that concern me, and I completely agree with your point about depth. But I start to get more concerned about depth when we're getting into like playoff teams and teams that we think are going to be contenders. Like that's normally my issue, where it's like, oh, they've got lots of star players, but they're not necessarily able to confidently roll 4 lines. The Wild, I don't think will be able to comfortably roll 4 lines. I think there's some worries here. But to get to 5th, I don't necessarily think that's going to matter, even though I do think it will be tight with the 2 teams I have below them. I definitely see the case for 7th, but I just think they have a little bit more talent than the 2 teams I have below them.
Yep, and I agree with that. I think you said a lot of fair things there. I think the Wild are their team that I think their ceiling could be high just because of the amount of talent they do still have. But I do, in my opinion, I think their depth lets them down, especially compared to a lot of the teams throughout here. Do you want to talk about your team that you have in 7th? If we want to move on.
Sure, I can talk about my number 7. My number 7 is a team that I just think has been kind of on the downswing for a little bit, to where I look at this roster and I go, oh, like, they made a move this offseason that I love, but I don't know if it's enough to complement it. I look at this team and I'm like, I don't know if there's really a star player here. But I don't know. That team won the Stanley Cup not that long ago. That's the St. Louis Blues. I have them in 7th. I look at this team and I think that second line kind of says it all for me. Brandon Saad on the left wing. Buchnevich is pretty good, and then Jake Neighbors on the right wing. If that is what you're filling out your top 6 with, I'm a little concerned. Jordan Kyrie's played really well, but I think, unless I'm missing something, I think that's he's probably their best player.
Robert Thomas is pretty good. But I do
Robert
think
Thomas is pretty good.
I actually like that.
But even then,
line.
I don't think that changes my argument.
No, I don't think it does. I'm
just
not.
In
that's
terms
not
of
what
like,
I'm
I don't.
I do still think they're pretty
that's
bad,
kind of.
But
yeah, that's kind of my case for Minnesota above St. Louis, is because I think both of these teams don't necessarily have the best depth, but Minnesota at least has those top tier players that are going to steal them a couple wins every few weeks or so. They're going to steal a couple. I don't see that on this Blues team. I love what they did with Holloway and Broberg, getting them on the team. I think that was super smart. Um, there's again good players on this team, but nothing great. And I think in order to, it's a competitive division. I need to see something great in order to kind of move them.
Yeah, no, that's very fair too. I think I think I'd give their depth a bit more credit than what you're kind of giving them. I do actually think that I think their defense looks fairly good. They're usually fairly well coached as well. I think that their system works well with the amount of talent they have. Like I think they've got a lot of the same guys. I yeah, I don't know. I the Blues are a weird team to place for me. I do disagree with you on a few things, but not that much because at the end of the day, I do have them in my sixth spot. So you have them seventh.
Okay.
I have sixth. So yeah, I think we're not very far off. I do think that the Blues are really not that good. I think their top line is actually fairly stellar. I really like that. I mean, they've had it for the last few years, but Braden Shen, Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou, that's just a good line. It works for them. But on a lot of really, really good teams, like the top teams in the NHL, that might be a really good second line, right? I feel like I would call that like, and when I say really good, I mean elite of the elite second line, which having that as your first line isn't that bad. That's still pretty good, right? Like a really good it sounds weird, but a really, really good second line is still better than the majority of first lines, right? Like if you want to look at it like that. But that being said, I still I don't know. There's not a lot about this team that necessarily makes me feel that much better. I don't think that their offseason moves are going to be enough to really elevate them. In fact, I think one second, does that have them staying in the same spot? Where were they last year? That for me, that would have them falling one. Yeah, that would have them falling one spot from fifth to sixth, which feels about right. They feel like a team that's starting to go down. But anyway, what team do you have in sixth?
So for my sixth team, I think this kind of rounds out a tier for me. I wouldn't be shocked if you had them in fifth to kind of round out your bottom four too. And that is the Nashville Predators. And they've made a lot of moves to try to stay relevant to a certain extent. They had that really weird run at the end of last year where they, I mean, didn't look that great at the start of the year, and then they just kind of went on a tear and made the playoffs, and it's like, what the hell happened here? And they gave it a good fight against Vancouver. But I'm just looking at this roster, and I think adding Stamkos at this point, I don't know how much that moves the needle. Like, he's still going to give you good play, but at this point in his career, like, is he a real game changer or anything? No. I don't know if they necessarily expect that from him. I hope not. Bringing in Marchessault, I think, is a bit of a better move. I like the way that kind of rounds out that top six. But I don't know. I Philip Forsberg is always going to be really good. They've obviously got a great presence in net and Saros. I think it's a pretty, like, you convinced me to put Nashville at 5 over Minnesota. But I still think, again, like, the rest of this roster just doesn't necessarily speak to me all that much. Like, past Forsberg, O'Reilly, Stamkos, Marchessault, I don't really see that much there. As a Flames fan, seeing, like, Mark Jankowski on the third line, I kind of go, okay. And, yeah, I don't know. You've got Roman Josi, but the rest of that defense... Hey, Brady Shea, too, is pretty good, but the rest of that defense doesn't necessarily look all that great to me. I don't know. I think it'll be close with them in Minnesota. But, yeah, I just think they were kind of... I wouldn't be shocked if it's kind of a thing where they saw their team kind of outperform expectations at the end of the year and just kind of decided to jump all in on that. And I don't necessarily know if that's going to be the best idea. Like, I don't know how well Stamkos is going to play in Nashville. I could foresee a bit of a disappointing season coming for them. They do have the talent to make it work. I think that's just kind of where my head's at right now.
Would you like to talk about Nashville later? I feel like I should save a lot of this conversation for kick the can down the road a little bit, because I do not.
Okay.
I do not have the.
So you have them in. So you have them in like third or something. Okay, good to know.
Something like that. But I do not have Nashville in fifth. That's for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Moving on.
Which team do you have in fifth?
In fifth, I have the Utah Hockey Club. Hockey Club, sorry. Excuse me. But the Utah Hockey Club, I have in fifth. I like them. I like them a lot, actually. We were talking about it beforehand, Caleb, me and you, and they still look like the Coyotes. A lot of things here still look like the Coyotes. The Coyotes team that I will mention came in second last in this division last year, only winning 36 games and landing 10 points behind the Wild. I like a lot of the moves they made. I really do. I think that defense is fun. I think Sergachev and Dursey is a hell of a top line defensively. Valimaki has really grown into that second line role. John Marino is a solid defenseman as well, filling out that top four super nicely. Ian Cole's a really nice add. Michael Kesselring is fine. Like, that bottom line doesn't even necessarily matter that much, and I still think that those guys are pretty solid. I think that defense is stellar. I think that I think their offense, it's not even like they added anything. They just got older, and in their case, that's a good thing. I think a lot of their pieces are looking at the chance to potentially have career years. Like, I think Keller has just gotten better over time. Cooley is solidifying himself in the top six. Gunther just got given a new deal. I think a lot of what I see here is just going to continue to get better year after year. And for the first time in a very long time, if you're including the Coyotes in their history, I guess, they are looking like they could potentially be good, be okay, be like, middle of the road, which is exactly what they are sitting in fifth. I think that they, and it shows how high I am on basically every team above them, I'd say. I think that they're going to be in a tough fight with the team that I have in fourth for that spot, truthfully. I think if they live up to expectations. But I won't go crazy. I'll keep Utah at that fifth spot. I think that's a good jump for them. I think going into the season after this one, things get a little bit more interesting.
You say you won't go crazy. I'll go crazy if you want me to.
Do you want to hold it? Do you want to wait then? Or do you want to talk?
I mean, if we could, I guess, okay, if you held off on Nashville, I can hold off on Utah.
Okay, fair enough. So
that was...
do we have your fifth? Have you said your fifth?
Yes. My fifth was Minnesota.
Right. Okay, so we're moving into the top four. We're moving into the top four then. Fun. Okay.
Yep.
So these are starting to be playoff teams. Starting to be teams that could potentially make their way in. In fourth for me, I have the Winnipeg Jets. And this is a pretty big drop for them. They came in second last year. They won 52 games, I believe. Yep, 52. Had a very solid season. I don't know. I don't even think they necessarily made that many changes. I just don't like it. I don't like it. I feel like the whole division around them got a lot better, and they stayed the same. And it's for that reason that I have them dropping 2 spots here to fourth. I still think they're a playoff team. I still think they're pretty good, but I don't know. It's I don't necessarily think that they're good enough to really compete with the top 3 that I have in this division. But like I said, I could see a world where they're fighting with Utah for that playoff spot. And I think at the end of the day, I think they're going to just barely edge out Utah. In what'll probably be really, really close, I think. Because I think at the end of the day, I think Utah's going to get a lot better this season, and I think Winnipeg's going to get worse, and they're probably going to meet somewhere in the middle. But, yeah. I think a lot of things that I said about the Blues apply to this Winnipeg team at this point, with the big tiebreaker being mainly Josh Morrissey is a hell of a defenseman, and Connor Hellebuck is a hell of a goalie. And I feel like it's those 2 players that really elevate them into this top 4. But I don't think they have much other than that really stands out to me that makes me feel like, yes, I think this is a playoff team. I think they're good enough to stay in the playoffs. I don't think they're good enough to keep the spot they previously had.
Yeah, and I'll keep my analysis here pretty short because, again, I pretty much agree with everything you said. I also have them in fourth.
Yeah.
They're also my number 4 team. Your kind of viewpoint of, yeah, they'll make the playoffs, but it's not going to be as pretty as last year sounds about right. I don't know, just necessary. I don't even. Yeah, the rest of the division around them, I think, got better. The vibes just feel off in a certain way in terms of, like, I look at their roster and don't necessarily think, like, oh, yeah, this is a, like, whatever they were last year, second in the division. I don't necessarily think that. And they proved us wrong last year with how they performed. I don't know how sustainable that is. So, again, when the division is getting better, nothing really stands out to me about this team. It all kind of feels like this is the same old Jets they've been rolling out more or less for the past however many years. Maybe it's just because I'm getting tired with it, and they haven't really had any success past just having good regular seasons. I don't know. Nothing about it inspires. Maybe it's just fatigue on my end, but yeah, no. Fourth feels about right for them. That doesn't. Your pick does not surprise me, and it's not something I'm going to disagree with. I also have them in fourth.
No, yeah, fair enough. I think the Jets are honestly, other than Chicago, probably the easiest team to pick here in my opinion, because I think they're too good for the bottom. I think they're not quite good enough for the top. They fall right in the middle pretty comfortably for me. But anyway, top three. This is where it gets interesting. And I have a pretty controversial one as my third. As Caleb kind of sniffed out. You kind of sniffed out which team could be here. And in that fact, I'm lying to you. I'm lying through my teeth. It's the fucking Colorado Avalanche. Go nuts, people. Riot in the streets. Riot in the streets. Let's hear it. I want to hear all of you angry Avs fans. You're third. And you want to know why? Your depth sucks. Holy crap, this team sucks. Take Nathan MacKinnon away. Take Mikko Rantanen away. Like, that offense is terrible. Like, what even is that? Like, their bottom 9, I feel like, it's just atrocious. Like, I feel like that's a rebuilding team's bottom 9 in a lot of ways. And I still think they'll be good. You have Nathan MacKinnon, Rantanen, Devin Tays, Cale Makar. That's enough. Like, you have so much talent on this team. Hell, Samuel Girard has proven that he's a very good defenseman, too. So their defense is still going to be good. I think their defense is going to be good enough. Their offense, I feel like they're going to struggle. At certain points in the year, when that top line isn't performing, it's going to get rough. It's going to get rough. You need Nathan MacKinnon and Mikko Rantanen to be on their A game every single game if you want to win. And I don't know if that's going to happen enough for them to be able to stay in that top area where they were, especially if Landeskog isn't back. I think Landeskog comes back, and I think that changes a little bit. I think that helps them out a lot. But I don't know, man. I think they're going to be an interesting team this year. I'm not saying they'd fall further than I have them. Third in the division means that they'd be what? They'd be one of the... Hell.
They would play whoever you have in second.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And third in the division also is where they were last year, I should say. I didn't even realize that. But even with that being said,
I guess still behind the Jets, yeah.
Yeah, I still feel like that's a crazy thing to say, though. Especially with the Jets getting worse. Like, certain things else happening in the division. I feel like it's crazy to say that they're going to be in third. I think they're going to be in third. I think they're worse. I think they're landing in third with the fact that I don't like it. I don't like anything they did, but it's hard to put them any lower with the fact that they have MacKinnon, they have Rantanen, they have Tays, and they have Makar, and that's enough. You don't need anything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's...
Should I talk about the Avs now, or should I talk about my my third team? Is that... Because I have a whole bunch to say about the Avs, but I also have a whole bunch to say about my third team.
Okay.
I can go either way with it.
Okay, sure. Go. Do you want to do third then? We can push off Avs, I guess. Sure.
Yeah, I'll just keep going in order of what my teams are, because that's kind of how we've been doing it so far.
Sure.
And I have a lot of points to refute on your Avs thing, but we can keep people listening for that.
Sure.
So this is my shocker pick. I'm not going fucking buck wild and putting them in first or second like some other people are doing. My shocker pick is going in third, and that's Utah.
Okay, stopping right away. Who the fuck is saying Utah is going to be first? Name one person. I want to know who that person is. I want to know who that person is.
I'm not saying
that is a crazy take.
I'm just talking about some of the nut jobs that are saying a team like, I don't know, the Nashville Predators is going to be either second or first in this division.
Fair enough.
That's my point. This is absolutely the ceiling for Utah, but I have a couple reasons as to why I think this will happen. One of them I think you already pointed out to everybody in terms of this team got a year older, and for a team as young as the Coyotes, that means a lot. And I think these players are just going to continue to mature. Like, their whole core is basically just young stars like Clayton Keller, like a Logan Cooley, and I think that defense looks pretty damn good too. They did a lot to shore up that defense and moves that I really liked, where I kept going back and being like, oh, Utah made this move. Damn, that's really good. They added John Marino was one of them. I need to pull up the lines in front of me. There was another person who I really liked. Valimaki is playing great as soon as he's got there. Sergachev was the other one where I was like, damn, that feels like kind of a steal of a deal for what they got him at. Like, that their top two defensive pairs look great to me. And even going four lines deep in their offense, it's obviously not a fantastic fourth line.
It's a
Alex
fourth line.
Kerfoot on there.
Yeah, it's a fourth.
It's a fourth line. It's not anything where you're
average.
like, oh my god, their depth is terrible. Even
their third line's
Michelli,
really,
I believe is his name.
Yeah.
He played great.
Yeah, their third line's stellar.
There's a lot of potential there, but honestly, for as little as we know going into a season, I think intangibles are almost everything. And the biggest intangible that you can possibly have is the move from one city to another. I don't think it should be discounted to just say this is going to be the same Coyotes team we're going to roll out as last year, where they finished second last in the division. Moving from a city where you are playing in a college arena, then there's no fans there every game because of just capacity. And I mean, even if it wasn't, nobody's going to fucking show up anyways. Going to a city where it looks like there's legitimate interest, they're going to play in a real arena, I think that means a lot, especially for these young guys, a lot of whom who have been in Arizona their whole careers and haven't had that kind of support. If they start hot, I could see this team just getting completely galvanized by that support and just going off on a crazy run that nobody expects them to and making the playoffs. I don't think that's anywhere out of the ordinary. They have the pieces to make it happen if they live up to it, and I think this move could spark that. Again, I'm not gonna go crazy. I'm not gonna have them any higher than this. This is their ceiling for sure. But I'm a lot more excited about this Utah team than I am about anybody else in the division, really, just in terms of potential-wise. We know the Stars and Avs are going to be good. We kind of know what every other team generally is going to be about. I'm excited about this Utah team. And maybe this is a prediction we look back on and say this is a bit too early. If not this year, it's coming soon.
Yeah.
But I think the move is going to spark something.
You know what's funny? I disagree with absolutely none of the things you said. The only thing I disagree with is how much better they're going to get. I do, and you said it. You said exactly what I'm going to say.
It's a big jump.
You said exactly what I'm going to say. It's 1 year too soon. I think that you give them one more season, and I think they're in this third spot, and I don't think it's controversial at all. But I think I had them in fifth. I think, which like I said, I have them basically fighting to the last game for that playoff spot with the Jets. I think that they're going to be the NHL's darling. Everybody's going to love Utah this year because they're just going to be they're going to be gritty, they're going to want it, they're going to be young, and they're going to be willing to fight for it. And I think that it's all of those reasons that is going to make them really, really fun to watch. I don't know if they're a playoff team yet. I think that for all the things that you can give that defense, I don't necessarily think the Stars up there on offense are completely there yet. I still think that they're going to be good. I don't know. I don't think that I don't think that all the pieces are quite there. I don't even know what I necessarily say you have to add. Truthfully, like you said, the offense got better because they got 1 year older. The offense is going to be even better in 2 years, or yeah, in 2 years, yeah. So I think that at the end of the day, I don't know if it's playoffs this year, but I think it's definitely playoffs next year, assuming that there's not some big revelation this season where we find out that Clayton Keller's a fraud and Logan Cooley can't score more than 15 goals a season. Like assuming we don't see something nuts like that happen. I think they are absolutely on a trajectory to be as good as you're saying that you think they're going to be. Just not this season, I'd say would be my big takeaway. So, top two. Yeah. We talking about the Avs or are we talking about the Predators first? Which direction do you want to go in?
I kind of want to jump on the Avs because we kind of left that door open, and I kind of want to jump on a couple things. Sure. One, yes, I understand that this depth on this team looks like a concern as of right now, and I think the big inflection point in terms of what's going to happen to this team is the players that would normally fill where those kind of missing holes are going to be. And that is a big three of, obviously, Landeskog, and then Lehkonen and Nichushkin. Obviously, they're all out right now, and the time in which they're going to be out is all pretty nebulous. Landeskog has been out for a long time now. I didn't know, apparently, like we were talking about it before the podcast, you said he's been out 2 years. This is going on a third.
Do you want me to read the quote again, or do you want to... Because I can do that.
Yeah. Read the quote again.
Okay, so... What Bednar, who is the coach of the Avs, said about it was, I need to find it again, is his on Landeskog, is his timeline is when he says he's ready to go. It's kind of been the same for the last little while, but I know he's encouraged by the progress that he's made, and as are we. But as of putting a date on it, we're not going to do that quite yet, which is basically just saying, fuck off, we don't know yet. Like, it's, with the injuries he's had, I think that's very fair. I don't think you want to come back too early if you're Landeskog. But from what they're saying, it sounds like he's been at 90% for the last little bit. It's that last 10% that's been really tough to find.
Yeah. And I know it's been a long journey and there's no timeline for it, but it does seem like things have been on an upwards trajectory, and I think at some point this season he will come back. That's a big deal. That's a bit of a stretch, but I do think he will come back at some point. That immediately solves a lot of those issues, and that's just one of those three players.
Yeah.
Nichushkin was suspended, I believe.
There's a whole story behind that one, but yeah.
He was suspended for 6 months, and then will be eligible to apply for reinstatement after that. Again, another thing where we don't know the timeline. I think that's the one that's, again, the most... Even more so than Landeskog, like, don't know when that's going to happen. But again, that would solve a lot of their issues if he comes back.
It's also whether he'll even get to come back, I think, is the big thing. Do the Avs even
that I think is the least. That is the least likely out of the three, I think. But Lehkonen, I think we could see him come. We will see him come back at some point this season. Shoulder surgery in the offseason. He's going to miss the start of the season, but doesn't sound at this point like it's a full season injury. Those three players, we're not going to see any of them back at the start of the season, but I think at some point in the season, we're going to see at least one of them back, if not two. Saying all three is probably a bit too much, but that immediately solves so many of your depth issues. To the point where I'm like, yeah, no, this is the same Avs team. The other thing I will say is, even in a worst-case scenario, the Avs team of last year had the kind of same concerns that we had about them, that we're having about them right now. The roster doesn't look all that much different. Landeskog was still out, right? We still looked at this team, and we still looked at those bottom two lines and kind of flinched a little bit and said, what the hell is this? But they still managed to get it done. It's a big concern for the playoffs at a certain point if you're looking at it with this kind of lineup. But I still think they have the overall skill and talent to get it done. You said the bottom nine is really rough, but I really like Casey Middlestat and then Kiviranta. I think Kiviranta is really underrated. So I can't personally speak on Callum Ritchie, but I think those two players are pretty fantastic. I just don't see it being as much of a fall from grace as you think it's going to be. Um, I don't. I still have them as kind of a tier above everybody that comes below them in terms of big gap between Avs and the number 3 team. I know they were number 3 last year, but with the potential for some of that depth to come back, with having those same concerns somewhat alleviated last year, we saw that their stars can still carry them. And the other big thing is just that defense, I think, looks fantastic. Obviously, Taves, Makar, Gerard, but bringing in Shillington as, you know, a
Yes.
Flames fan, we know how good of a player he is. I do think the depth concerns are a concern. I'm not going to come out and say, like, you know, shouldn't worry about it, it's going to be fine, but I think it will correct itself. They may look rough at the start of the season, but I think that will get better. I don't think it's going to be enough to drop them past second place. I have them in second.
And you know what's funny? That's fair. Like, I'm not gonna necessarily come out and say that I think that's a crazy statement, because it's not. The Avs absolutely still have the talent to do it, and I'll agree with you. I think that I didn't point it out when I was going through it, but that bottom pairing for the Avs on defense, Shillington and Brandstrom, is going to be so fun, because that's two players who are both young and they play a very similar style, and I think that it's going to be like 5 forwards on the ice. It's going to be a hilarious thing to watch, but I think I just don't know. I think relying on the fact that you're just going to get back all 3 of those guys, and we don't know what Landeskog's... It hurts to say, because I loved Landeskog as a player when he was healthy. We don't know if he's going to come back and be the same player. He's a physical player. When he was healthy, he was a power forward. He was tough, and he was a perfect like foil to McKinnon, who's so like... He's so skilled and finesse. It's all finesse and all of that. Rantanen's a very similar thing. He was the power forward on the left wing, and it worked great. I don't know if I'd necessarily be that confident that Landeskog is going to be able to come back and be the same guy. And then again, I guess it's not like they need him to be. If he can be a top 9 player for them, like in their and I'm not. That's not what I'm saying. My prediction would be that he's probably going to land somewhere on that second line. And if he's on the first line, he's probably going to be a decent step back of what that first line used to be. But I just don't know. Like there's so many questions with this Avs team that saying that they're going to take a step forward, which is the thing, because the Jets were in second last year.
I think it's... I don't know if it's taking a step forward as much as the Jets taking a step back. That's all I'll say.
Fair.
Standings can lie. Standings can lie to you.
And all I'll say about that as well, to stack on top of that, I feel like the Jets take a step back and the Predators take a step forward. Because I think that this Predators team is going to be bonkers. I think it's... Because you know what's funny? When I first saw all of the moves that the Predators made, my initial reaction was, great, panic. We love to see panic. Whenever all these teams... They know they can't rebuild. They're stuck in the middle. Let's bring in all of these old guys and let's roll the dice. Let's see what happens. You know what's funny? When I look at this lineup for the Predators, you know what I see? I see a team that's about to wreck some shit. That forward core is so fun. This Predators team, what they were good at last year, spectacular defense, incredibly well coached. Though they were with Saros in between the pipes, they were one of the best defensive teams in hockey. And you gave them Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault to add to their scoring. Their top 6 now has Philip Forsberg, Ryan O'Reilly, Gustav Nyquist, Steven Stamkos, Tommy Novak at center, who I don't know a lot about, but I'm assuming when you have Jonathan Marchessault and Steven Stamkos as your wingers, you're gonna fucking figure it out. You'll be good. Like that's not an issue. But honestly, for all of like the things, when I look at their bottom 6, I'm a little bit more worried. Like I feel like their bottom 6 is a lot more average, but there's a difference between having one really good line and having 2 really good lines. And I think that's what the Predators have. I think they have 2 insanely stacked top lines. That defense is going to be stellar. I think that Saros is I'm so high on Saros. I love him as a goaltender. I love his style. I think that if he can have another stellar season, if this forward core works as well as it could work very, very well. I think that the Predators absolutely can steal this second spot. And if, you know what's funny? If the team at the top wasn't who they are, I would definitely be a little bit more inclined to say that they could potentially fight for it. Dallas is insane. Dallas is so good. So I don't think I'll go quite that far. But I think, you know what's funny? I love this Nashville team. I think they're going to be really fun to watch. I'm going to be cheering them on because I'd love to see. It's one last hurrah for Marchessault. It's a last hurrah for Stamkos. It's a last hurrah for Ryan O'Reilly. I think it's all three of those guys. They might be like on their last ropes, but I still think what we've seen in the last few years from all three of those guys is that they can still do it. And the best part about the entire thing is they don't necessarily have to be the same players that they used to be because it's not an offensive team. This is a defensive hockey team. Nashville historically has been a defensive team. And you just added three of the best scorers of the last decade to that team. I think they're going to be good. I think they're going to be a lot of fun. So I'm excited to see what Nashville brings this upcoming season.
I think it's a bit of an overreaction. I think
it's gonna be great.
I think your optimism on them. I think you've convinced me a little bit to the point where I see them in 6th on my list, and I maybe would swap them with Minnesota in hindsight. But I wouldn't go much farther than that. I understand your points. I'm not gonna harshly disagree against any of them. I just think
the
changes they made. I'm not nearly as confident. I think this division is good. I think there's a lot of good teams in this division. Again, we both have the Jets in 4th, and like we said, the Jets are still a good team. It's gonna be hard. There's gonna be a lot of competition. I know they did make the playoffs last year. So I get your point in terms of they can try to play that same style of hockey and just add the scoring touch onto that. But it's I think I'm still in the mindset that you talked about in the start of your segment to say it really does feel like they just saw something and just went, okay, fuck, here's our last kind of chance at some sort of momentum.
But when you're last gas, when teams do that, they bring in guys to solid up their second line. You know what I mean? They're bringing in guys to make their second line pretty. You brought in Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault. That is two of the players who were stars on teams that have won the cup in the last 3 years. That's panicking. I get it. It's against all of the things that I personally believe in when it comes to building a hockey team. But I think that this is the rare situation where we're going to see it work. Because when you bring in that amount of talent while panicking, when you have that good of a defense and that good of a system and that good of a goaltender, I think it's going to come together nicely. I think that I think this is a playoff team, absolutely. And you know what's funny? Even if we see a world where they just barely sneak in, they don't necessarily have the best regular season, talk about Steven Stamkos's and Jonathan Marchessault's playoff performances in recent years. This could potentially be a team that goes on to shock quite a few people when the playoffs come around. But I think that this team's gonna be. I said fun. Fun's not the right word. They don't play a fun brand of hockey. They play a defensive style of hockey. I think it's gonna be a very efficient team. I think it's gonna be a team that wins. You want to know what wins?
Yeah.
Defense wins. I think this team had defense last year. Their issue was they couldn't score. They couldn't keep up with the teams that could score. Because at the end of the day, no matter how good your defense is, when Connor McDavid's skating down the ice at 200 miles per hour, you're going to get scored on. What you need to be able to keep up with those teams is guys who can score, maybe not on the same level, but score enough to keep you in games. And I think that's what they added. I think that's all that was really missing.
We shall see. I just don't think I have enough faith in those two guys at this point in their career making that much of a difference from last year. I have faith in their defensive style of hockey, but to say they're going to completely unlock this new scoring touch because of a 35-year-old Steven Stamkos and Marchessault,
Stamkos is a
I don't.
sniper. He doesn't need his wheels. He's got Marchessault passing it to him. It'll be good. I think
We shall see. We shall see. I think it's just. I think I could see them competing for a playoff spot again. I think I do have them pretty low. I think I would bump them up a spot to fifth, which may or may not get them in the playoffs at a low spot. I don't see them going much higher than that. Maybe a ceiling of fourth.
Okay.
To put them in second is just kind of crazy to me.
No, I don't. I mean, the crazy part is putting them above the Avs. But I think at the end of the day, it's just because of the fact that I think I'm a bit more of a believer in what Nashville has built here than I am, I think, with the Avs. In the sense of, I think the system for the Avs is a lot more, we're going to score a lot and then we're going to win. I don't necessarily think that doesn't work every time. It doesn't work against the best of the best. I think Nashville, with the depth they have the chance to join the best of the best here. That being said, maybe we should talk about the best of the best, who we've held off on. We've argued a lot throughout the middle here. This is something we're both going to be able to agree on, and it's a very simple statement.
It started with unity.
Yes.
It's going to end with unity.
It's going to end with unity. The Dallas Stars are fucking nuts. They're an insane hockey team. There's no competition for them at the top here. Assuming no injuries, I mean, they're a perfect hockey team in a sense. I think that the only reason they didn't go to the Cup Finals this last season was because of how stellar that offense for the Oilers was. I think that the Oilers are like the perfect foil to a team like Dallas, in the sense that the only way that you can beat a team that is just better in every single way is to just blow the brakes off of them. To have McDavid, have game breakers, right? Guys who can just absolutely break the game in half. And Dallas has those on their own side, but they don't have McDavid, and they lost. I just don't know. Dallas needs to win at some point here, right? They're so good. They're so insane. Every single year we talk about it, this team is bonkers. And you know what's funny? We've talked about teams like the Lightning in recent years. We've talked about Vegas and how they've bent the rules a little bit, to try and get an advantage. Dallas has done it the right way. They did it through the draft. They brought in tons of depth pieces, worked around their old core, and I mean, I already pointed it out, but drafted insanely well. I don't know. I think that it's funny because every single year, whenever you see these insane teams, you keep thinking, this has to be, this is it. This is their last really good chance. I look at this Dallas team, and I think that they are pretty much the same squad we saw last year, and for them, that's a good thing. Because I think that they needed to bring back the same squad. Because I don't know if it's necessarily getting better. It's just being more ready and knowing what the Oilers are going to bring. Because I think at the end of the day, when everything's settled, when the Western Conference, we're going to do a playoffs thing, so maybe I shouldn't say that. But when the Western Conference really starts to settle out, and we see we're going to see two teams sitting at the top. No question about it. It's going to be a rematch, Dallas and Oilers, because they're both just so much better than everybody else this year. And I think, it's funny because for the last few teams, I've gone through every single line and pointed out the little things. I'd be sitting here all day. They're so good. They're an all-star team in a lot of ways, and they're coached to perfection as well. Their the way they play just works perfectly. They're just good. They're good. They play hockey the right way. They're gonna win a bunch of games. They're gonna go far in the playoffs, and they're gonna end up facing off with that Oilers team that was the perfect foil for them. And it's just whether they can come into that being ready for the storm.
Yeah, and I mean, you talk about Dallas doing it the right way. I think that's a big thing in terms of, you look at a lot of these teams just kind of jump on potential really early. You look at a team like, I don't know, maybe Nashville in terms of just you
I don't
get
know
a
what
little
you're
bit of
talking about.
momentum, and you just kind of start going crazy with bringing in the
Nashville
veterans. They
Predators,
haven't really-
homegrown talent, Steven Stamkos is going to lead them to glory.
Yeah. But Dallas hasn't done stupid stuff like that. Dallas has stayed true to their system of slowly developing out prospects, and pretty much all of them have paid off. And they continue to get infused with new young talent.
Logan
I mean,
Stankoven
you
is
say
going
this
to be
team,
really good too. That's the funny.
he's
thing.
going to
Like,
be.
they have so many young guys too. Like Thomas, the other he already had a good season last year, but Thomas Harley is also just like growing into his own now. Like they have so many guys who look like they're ready to just slide right in. Like it's
Well,
a constant
it's just
it's
like
a constant
every-
rotating door.
It's every year that you feel like there's a new, like, great young stars player on the horizon. And I think that started off with Robertson, and you go to like Heiskanen, and then that's just kind of kept going for like the last 5 to 6 years, which is just crazy.
And they've always been really
yeah,
good
we
at
saw
drafting. Like that's it's just how they do things.
Yeah.
Like they just build from the
Like
ground up.
Yeah, we saw Wyatt Johnston go off in the playoffs last year. Stan Coleman had a great season. It's probably going to continue to grow. I know Maverick Bork is another like a young player who's this is his year to kind of break out a little bit more. I know he's another newer young player that they're excited about. Yeah, it's just like the continued infusion of young talent not only makes them a crazy roster, but also gives them sustainability. And that's something none of these teams in this division have, is that consistency. And that's really
Chicago's
important.
consistent.
They're a better
consistently
team.
Bad. So that's not entirely true.
Even then, Chicago is getting better. Chicago is getting better.
Fair,
But
I guess.
But Dallas has that consistency. They're consistently good. There's no real reason to doubt them. I completely agree. Having anybody else in first would be pretty crazy.
Unless the team in first is the Nashville Predators, in which I would completely agree fully, 100%.
I'm leaving trick
chips.
play. I can't even
Putting the chips all on the table. Nashville Predators, baby. They're winning the cup.
The segment is over. No more Predators talk. No more Predators talk until November.
Well, you know what? At least with how much we are YouTubers now, at least it's good to know that you're not a Predator.
Can't say the same about you, apparently. So that's not looking good for us.
Yeah.
Solo trick play podcast.
Let's not put
with
that. Let's not put that into the world.